We're recording.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody. Pleasantly surprised or happy that we see so many of you on with us so early in the morning. I appreciate you jumping on here with us and starting your day with a good cup of coffee and learning about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. How else would you want to start your morning, right, Tom?
Absolutely.
So glad to be with you today. We're going to spend some time talking today about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, PeopleSoft as a service on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We'll be talking about a couple of use cases, specifically Harkins Builders, which is one of our latest clients to move on to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. And hopefully you'll come away today learning a little bit more about how PeopleSoft would work on cloud infrastructure. So with that, I'm just going to jump in here. And I heard a little audio. So just make sure you guys, if I don't know if people can mute or unmute yourself. I don't know, Laura, if you could tell us if that's true or whatever. But if we need to have any kind of, do we need to say anything at the beginning here to tell people to mute themselves or anything like that, Laura?
Yes, if everyone could please mute themselves. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other quick housekeeping we need to start with, but
nope, you're ready to go.
Okay, ready to go. All right. Okay. All right. So that's me, Cameron McClurg, Vice President of SpearMC Consulting. I've been doing PeopleSoft. I was thinking this morning, good way to introduce myself. I've been doing PeopleSoft work since the Clinton administration. So that, that dates me. But what I like to focus on is some of the newer stuff. I think it's always fun to start with that foundation of this really, really robust, mature application of PeopleSoft, but looking at new things, and that's what I like to focus on. So new stuff like Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, obviously, Oracle Guided Learning, which I have a presentation later on, and some of the new emerging technologies. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I've been doing PeopleSoft for a long time. Previously to SpearMC, worked within several organizations doing PeopleSoft implementation support, etc. One of those places where I worked, I met Tom. Tom, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Cameron. Yes, my name's Tom Tretter. I'm actually Cameron's colleague at SpearMC. Like Cameron, I've been doing PeopleSoft work for the majority of my career, worked in various roles, both supporting PeopleSoft with an organization and as a consultant. Like Cameron, enjoy talking about and really focusing on some of the newer features. There's so much PeopleSoft has to offer these days, and the flexibility is really almost unrivaled across ERPs, even cloud, with the ability to tailor it to a specific organization's needs without customizing. So lots of exciting things, and with OCI, as we'll talk about, and you've probably heard, it can also run in more of a SaaS model as well. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining, and Cameron, I'll hand it back over to you.
And you didn't mention, but you have a much better headshot than I do, much more professional headshot. So.
Yes, thanks to the last Quest conference, Blueprint 4D. So there's a benefit of being on site.
SpearMC, this is us. We focus on PeopleSoft. A few years ago, when we had a decision to make, do we want to start to move towards SaaS applications and other technologies beyond PeopleSoft? We said, you know what, we believe that our customers there's going to be staying power with PeopleSoft. We bet on that, and we said, we're going to focus on PeopleSoft. So that's our core. That's what we do. Pretty much 100% it's PeopleSoft. But anything that sort of surrounds PeopleSoft is what we focus on. So whether it's functional support of the different pillars within PeopleSoft, the way we do work versus, like managed services versus just one-off projects. Obviously talking today about hosting and doing work on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, emerging technology training, Kibana analytics. These are all of the things that we do, but PeopleSoft is our core. And so I like this graphic because it really sort of shows what we focus on. that focus on cloud infrastructure and specifically PeopleSoft and cloud infrastructure got us recognized by Gartner a couple of years ago, again in 2022 in the Gartner Market Guide for Oracle Professional Services. That's just a reflection of kind of our focus on going all in on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We don't get out there and present on AWS or Azure. Really, our focus is just PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. We believe that the specific model of putting PeopleSoft on OCI with the use of Oracle specific tools like PeopleSoft Cloud Manager, which we're going to talk about today, is a game changer. It's a differentiator for Oracle Cloud Infrastructure versus Amazon Azure. So that's where we focus, and it was nice to be recognized for that. We have a lot of sessions. I don't know if any other consulting group has as many sessions as we do. I would guess they probably don't. This is our sessions over the next 3 days. I personally have six of them, which is probably too many. But we've got just tons and tons of good content. I would really encourage you to jump in and learn about all these new things. Tom's got another great one on Anne Rundle doing projects and grants on OCI as well. I've got one specifically today, Oracle Guided Learning, which I'm really excited about. So come to that one if you want to learn about what we're doing with Oracle Guided Learning. And then a bunch of other stuff. I'm not going to go through all of them. It would take the rest of the hour. So for today, we're going to talk about, generally the case for cloud infrastructure and what that looks like for PeopleSoft customers. Specifically, then we'll focus in on what does it look like to put PeopleSoft on cloud infrastructure and specifically OCI. We'll then sort of turn attention to specific features that, again, only exist on the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure versus Azure or AWS. And then we'll finish up with specific success stories. We're going to try to sprinkle in sort of what happened, how we did Harkins throughout this presentation, although we have a few slides at the end that specifically focus on Harkins. But Tom will jump in, and Tom led that project. And so we'll be able to just sort of sprinkle in sort of things related to specific clients that we've had throughout the presentation. So I always start with this when I talk about this, because I want you to kind of look at these logos at the top left here. You got Salesforce, Zoom, ADP, Slack, Office 365. So those are kind of our professional sort of applications that we might use as a professional. On the right side, you got TurboTax, Netflix, kind of more personal use. All of these things at the top are essentially cloud applications. And my question to you is, do you know where these things are hosted? And of course, it could be Amazon, it could be Oracle, could be Azure. The point is, you probably don't. Now, you could probably guess Office 365 is hosted on Azure. But if you think about, like, for example, Zoom, I actually included this little article down at the bottom, which is actually it was kind of funny to me. Oracle went about 2 years during pandemic, said, hey, just put out a press release. Zoom is working on OCI, and it's hosted on OCI. And then that made Amazon jump up and say, no, it's not, it's on Amazon. And then Zoom actually put out kind of a press release saying, we actually work on both. And we have stuff on Amazon, we've got stuff on Oracle. And the point is, as a consumer of Zoom, it doesn't matter. It doesn't actually matter. Like, now, if you want to get into the back end of how you set up the application and everything, yeah, it does matter where you're going to put that application. But as a consumer of that application, you don't really care, as long as it's sort of presented to you. And essentially, that's what we're talking about with PeopleSoft. When PeopleSoft moves to cloud infrastructure, you essentially can move towards a model where you're essentially serving up that application to your users. And that's what we do, of course, with OCI. And people can just essentially become users of the application and not administrators of the back.
Noodles.
So I'm going to ask everybody to mute, because I hear somebody who's probably a little young for this. All right. Okay. So Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So when we talk about putting applications on cloud infrastructure, what are we really talking about? Well, we're essentially saying, everything that IT does in your organization on-prem has to happen in other servers, other computing networks outside of your premises. And so what are those types of things? Well, you have applications, you've got data, databases, core infrastructure, of course, things like servers and all this other stuff, what OS and VMware is running. All this stuff that IT has done for years on premises is now available as essentially services on other people's servers, basically. So if you look at Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, they got these data centers all around the world. This actually is a bit of an old graphic. The ones that are where you can see commercial planned are actually no longer planned, but the current graphic that actually has a couple more planned ones, I thought wasn't as good as this graphic, because it actually shows the cities that it's in, which I think is kind of cool. So I left this graphic in, but the point is, when you move towards cloud infrastructure, you basically just get to pick where you want your application to exist. And that might be geographic reasons. It might be legal reasons that you must have your data within the country. Perhaps you have a reason and you have a multinational corporation where there's reasons to perhaps have a replication of data and systems across multiple different countries. So you have complete flexibility when you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure to say, yeah, we'll put it in San Jose, or we'll put it in Phoenix or Ashburn, or no, we're going to have a secondary environment over in Europe somewhere, something like that, right? So you get to just choose that. There's no new contract, there's nothing. You just basically say, yeah, we're going to just set up an instance over there on that tenancy, or sorry, that region. Each of these regions have redundancy within those regions and all sorts of stuff like that, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Okay, so if that's just generally cloud infrastructure and you get to pick where your servers are, what does it look like to put PeopleSoft on OCI? And specifically, the differentiator here with putting PeopleSoft on OCI is the application that you get called PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. Cloud Manager is essentially a PeopleSoft instance that manages your other PeopleSoft instances. Okay, so that kind of is a funny way to say it, but that's kind of what it is. You pull up PeopleSoft in it, and here's an image of it. It looks just like your normal PeopleSoft, but it's a separate instance, a separate environment called PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. Again, it only exists on OCI. And when you set this up, you can then manage the life cycle of your other applications. So it allows you to handle the elasticity, which is a very cloud infrastructure type of word, but the ability to scale up and use the cloud computing to make your systems more robust, your servers more robust. But you can, things like backup and restore, start, stop, updates, all of that just becomes sort of a push of a button or setting it up through what we call policy or governance, which I'll sort of drill into here in a second. It also comes with a lift and shift utility where you can kind of package up your application on-prem and move it into the Cloud Manager. You also get early release of tools upgrades. So 8.6.0, which you may have heard about, 8.6.0 will be released here. I can't remember the exact date. I don't know if Tom, if you remember hearing that yesterday. It's within the next, I think, couple weeks, I think is what I heard. And that's going to be only on OCI right now. So people that are on OCI over cloud infrastructure, you will get access to 8.6.0. You can download it, install it. It will be coming on-prem by, I believe, I heard beginning of December. So you get early release of the tools, you get to evaluate it, you get to see if it actually solves problems that you've been having with your current tools upgrade or tools version. And, again, get to sort of drill into what are the new features and how can that solve your problem. So it's a faster sort of process. Lastly, governance. I want to talk just quickly about governance. This came out, I think, in Cloud Manager 12, and we're on 14 now. I really like governance. What it allows you to do essentially is to set up policies that allow you to turn on all these things like backup, restore, start, stop, based on rules that you put in, and then those rules can be applied to all your different environments. So what are we talking about? So for example, these are all the things you can do with the governance. So things like automate lifecycle tasks. You can shut down environments during off hours. which I'll show here in a second, scheduling, provisioning, sort of scaling up, scaling down with the middle tier, let's say, provisioning additional middle tiers to beef up your environment to handle additional load. You can do the schedule of regular backups, all the scheduling stuff. So all of that's done through Policy Manager, which is through your governance. So looking at one specific thing like shutting down your environments, let's take a look at that one thing. And this is from our environment internally. What we did is we just said, hey, let's put on this policy that says it's a nights and weekends policy. Basically, we're going to shut down our PeopleSoft non-prod. Of course, we play with PeopleSoft, right? So we don't have production PeopleSoft, but we shut down our dev or test environments, our play environments for nights and weekends. By doing that, we save ourselves a lot of money. And if you think about just the time of how long you keep something on, if you only keep it on for 40 hours during a work week, you're essentially taking 76% of your compute costs, which are your servers. You're taking the servers offline for 76% of the time. And that translates to a direct impact on cost savings. Here you can see this comes from OCI, this is not a graph I made, this comes from your OCI actual environment where you go on there and you actually can watch and compare your costs, look at your costs over time. Here you can see that the storage, you retain your storage, of course, but your servers come down, and that's kind of how cloud computing works, okay? So here's just a very simple example of how putting in a very simple policy, which takes a couple minutes, can lead to direct cost savings of on cloud infrastructure.
Hey, Cameron, I'm going to jump in. I just want to give a few examples from Harkins too, if you want to go back to that slide. On both points around PeopleSoft Cloud Manager and the governance. We did use PeopleSoft Cloud Manager to create all of our environments. It's actually quite an interesting project because it's actually multiple projects that we've kind of built into a program. We're actually, and we'll talk about this more in the case study slides, but we're actually re-implementing HCM 9.2. Harkins is on an older version 8.9, so they actually have not upgraded or applied patches in quite some time. They were using Remini Street for support, so off Oracle support, and so HCM was a re-implementation. So we've actually stood up all new non-prod environments using PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. We're using the governance piece to actually do exactly what Cameron mentioned, and that's we've met as a project team. We have multiple non-prod environments, and we're able to set up schedules to take those environments down when the project team is not using them. So rather than having all your non-prod environments running all the time, we're able to we're actually preparing for go live next month, and most of our work being done right now, we're doing a parallel test in a pre-prod environment. So we've got 4 non-prod environments besides that production environment, which we're not really using. So over time, we've updated those governance rules to take those environments down, so the client's not incurring that cost of compute and usage. Another interesting piece is I mentioned we're doing a full parallel test for HCM with all of their converted employees and a full time period load and running payroll for all employees. In order to do that, we obviously could not interface that payroll and time and labor data to production financials. So we actually had to stand up a new financials environment to support that parallel test. We ended up calling it QAT, but with OCI, we were able to very quickly stand up that environment, connect integration broker to the HCM prod environment, pre-prod environment where we were running the parallel test. And, it really worked. I mean, we talk about scalability, but it's true. It's very simple to stand up new environments for for projects that you may have. And as you know, depending on the size of the project, you may need more infrastructure and more environments to support it. So just a huge, huge benefit, especially for this instance.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. There is somebody has their hand raised, Tom, if you don't mind checking that just to see if there's a question or something like that.
Yes.
So I'll keep moving and you can sort of see if there's a question. So this is a quick graphic that shows the concept of what we're trying to talk about here. So when we talk about the cloud computing, if you take the mindset of what you have on-prem and translate to the cloud, you're going to be overpaying. And what we're talking about there is when you're on-prem and you have an on-prem data center, you have to buy all of your hardware, and all of that's capital up front. You buy all your hardware, you put it in place, and then essentially your IT group is setting up applications on this hardware, and there's no real change in the costs because you can spin up an additional VM. There's no extra cost to that when you're on-prem because you've already paid for all of these servers. And so there's this sort of stair-step model of buying, servers and then provisioning them for your application. And so when you look at that blue line, that sort of shows how you spend on building internal on-prem infrastructure. And what you see is that there's a lag between when you have that and you provision that on-prem hardware or capacity for your applications, that you're either over capacity at times or you're under capacity at times. And that's what happens when you're on-prem essentially. Now, if you take the same mindset of moving to cloud infrastructure and you basically just sort of say, here's all my servers, just set them up, whether you need that capacity and that performance or not, you're basically taking that on-prem mentality, you're transferring to the cloud, and that's the wrong way to do it. You're going to be overspending and potentially massively if you do it that way. So what you really need to do is you need to try your best to follow the curve in terms of always having enough capacity for cloud capacity for the real needed capacity. So in PeopleSoft language, let's say you have you want to do POM maintenance or you want to upgrade people tools, and so you need additional capacity to handle an additional environment or maybe a couple of additional environments. So that's a traditional need where your capacity actually grows. And again, in the traditional model, you only had ability to just stair step and just create additional capacity, whether that was needed or not. And so what that ends up happening on the cloud is that means you're spending too much money when you're over capacity. But the flip side is true too, which is if you're under capacity, you have really unhappy users. Neither way is good. And so what the movement here of cloud infrastructure and cloud computing in general is to use essentially AI or machine learning to try to more closely match the needs of capacity with what you actually have provisioned for your applications. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. So Autoscale, let's take a look at this and this is a very technical sort of thing. So if you're more a functional person, I'll just sort of explain it, but you might set up your normal application to have, maybe you have this web application and then you have an application server, a process scheduler, maybe you do have a load balancer at the top of it. And that's kind of like your downtime, right? But let's say at month end, like in a financials environment, you need more horsepower. And so you actually need additional application servers, process schedulers. You need to beef that up to handle perhaps the increased load for that. And then perhaps even other times you have additional users. And so it's like month end plus. So you need to address that by building additional capacity to handle the load. Again, in a traditional model of on-prem, you would do this thing on the right, you would set it up that way and you'd leave it and you'd forget it. And on-prem, that's probably okay, although you're kind of using capacity that could be used for other applications. And so that ends up being inefficient on-prem. But on the cloud, that actually becomes really costly to do it that way. So what you really want to do is you want to think about some what's called auto scaling, which is the ability to bring your capacity up to meet the needs, and then bring it back down. Very important to bring it back down when it's not needed. This is a graphic that Oracle provides as part of when they talk about this, which talks about optimizing the resourcing through what they're calling automatically scaling tiers. Now, again, gets very technical here, and I'm not going to really get into it. I want you to kind of think about just the big picture here, which is using the tools in place that are only available in Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. In this case, it's data science, it's machine learning, to monitor your application, to predict with AI where you're going to need in a predictive and a proactive way to predict when you're going to need, but also react when it sees a lag and you need to actually automatically scale up. We heard yesterday from Oracle, they talked about that doing all this can respond within minutes to automatically scaling up your environments to create enough capacity for the demand that's coming at it within minutes. Again, traditional model, you have users complain about issues, it goes to a help desk, eventually it gets the people who are responsible for that, and it could be at minimum half a day to actually try to make a response to that. That's now coming down to minutes because of data science, because of cloud infrastructure. Okay, so it's really, really important.
Hey, Cameron,
yeah,
real quick, we do have a direct question.
Okay.
And I think this was around the schedule for uptime and downtime on some of the servers. This from Kumaran. He asked, once we've made config changes for downtime, can those be overridden for one-off emergency purposes? And the answer is yes. You can make changes to the schedules whenever you need them, and then you can always, bring environments up and down as needed. So it is very flexible in that.
Yeah, and it's really I would say as we kind of move towards kind of what happened in 13 and 14. So image 13 brought a lot of that stuff. One of the things that they have is this tagging notion, which allows you to use cloud. Tagging is a cloud infrastructure term that now is leveraged within PeopleSoft, the PeopleSoft Cloud Manager. So a lot of stuff that, you had sort of this parallel thing where OCI was developing new features, but integrating those features into Cloud Manager was something that kind of lagged behind. And now you're seeing, like with 13, you can use the tagging, and then some of the other things like the autoscaling, the machine learning, all that stuff that was been available on general OCI infrastructure is now becoming integrated into PeopleSoft Cloud Manager for use within PeopleSoft. Again, it's reinforcing the concept of the leveraging specifically the tools and capabilities on cloud infrastructure, or specifically OCI for PeopleSoft. So we're really excited about it. It's again, only happens here. A couple of things that on here that came out in 14. Things that mostly you could do on-prem before, like which COBOL you're going to use, and kind of some features around cloning. Putting sort of manual stops in upgrade scripts where you can kind of do automatically create audit and compare reports. Those are just things that are creating first of all parity with what a system administrator can do on-prem, but then taking it way beyond what they can do on-prem. And so that's the trend here that we see. These images come out twice a year, and so if you do the math, we're about 7 years into the evolution of Cloud Manager, and it's very, very robust at this point. All right, so moving towards what are some of those other tools on the platform that you can take advantage of. So here I'm gonna kind of move past PeopleSoft Cloud Manager and just talk generally about some of the tools on OCI that you can use. What you're looking at here is Oracle Management Cloud. Oracle Management Cloud is a tool that you can use on OCI. And let me just sort of take one quick step back. When you create a tenancy on OCI, you're essentially, all that tenancy word means is you're just creating an account, you get a login, and now you have this cloud infrastructure. And once you go on there, you can turn on any of these features. In traditional world, you can buy us, like traditional meaning on-prem, you can buy servers, you can install them. But if you want to, let's say, use load balancing, you have to go buy the load balancer from another company. If you want to buy a database might come from another company. And so you're procuring these different pieces, and it's, each one of those creates a contract, cost, et cetera, and generally capital costs for all those things. When we're talking about OCI tenancy, and this is true for Azure and AWS as well, when you create a tenancy on there, an account, you're basically just checking boxes. Yes, I want to use machine learning. Yes, I want to use a database of this size. Yes, I want to use load balancer. You're basically just saying, click of a box, you turn that thing on, and it just starts working. Of course, you start getting charged for that thing as well. But that's just part of using cloud infrastructure. And here's another one, Oracle Management Cloud. So this one is a monitoring tool that will monitor your servers and essentially your application health of your environment. So it's integrated monitoring into your applications. By the way, Oracle Management Cloud can run on the platform of OCI, but actually monitor databases or PeopleSoft environments actually outside of OCI. And what does that mean? It means that we can use this to help our managed services customers. So our customers that are not on OCI, they're still on-prem, we can actually set up agents there and monitor those applications and use the PeopleSoft Oracle Management Cloud to centralize the monitoring of all those applications. So we use this to monitor both our OCI customers and our on-prem customers. It allows us to predict heavy issues or downtime, potential problems, if there's capacity problems, all that stuff that we can, what you would normally do on-prem, but we can do that with Oracle Management Cloud. Here's just a quick sort of view of how you can kind of monitor the different, set up these, delivered rules. I want to, monitor the PM, the front end. I want to monitor the process monitor, process scheduler, et cetera. And you just set up these rules. They're all kind of delivered. And then this is a quick view of the actual email that comes out that says, hey, yeah, did you know, your utilization is at 80.01% and it's greater than the 80% that you set up in your rule. You should be aware of this because it might be going down very soon. And so then our system admins can jump on, look at that specific issue, see what's going on, address the issue, and prevent a problem because of this proactive monitoring. And one more housekeeping before anything else happens. Just make sure everybody mutes themselves because I just heard something. So thank you. All right, so all this great automation is really cool, but I think the question that came in before is, what about manual control? Yes, you have full manual control. That's the most basic level, foundational level of monitoring and building things on OCI. You can set up servers, you pick which shape you want, which tells you kind of how big the server is or whatever. You can change the shape over time. Say it's not working for you, you want to beef it up. So you go from, let's say, 1 OCPU to 2 or 4 to 8 with that additional memory. You can pick your chip, AMD, percentile. I mean, all that's complete manual sort of control on OCI beyond the automation. So it's not all just automated. All right, a couple more features that I'll talk through before we move on. So database as a service. So this concept is sort of the way Oracle has moved, Microsoft has moved this direction with the Azure database, Amazon has this with their databases. The concept is that you no longer have to buy the database like you would with major capital outlay, and then you're paying support or maintenance on it on an ongoing basis. Instead, you subscribe to it, which allows you to subscribe to the right level. You don't need to buy a massively big database when you just need a little database for something, right? So you're subscribing to that service, and not only does that address the licensing versus subscription element to it, capital versus operating, it also gives you additional features as a database service things like patching and things like that that you would have available to you, specifically through the database cloud service, but also where things are moving towards, which is the autonomous database, autonomous Linux, autonomous database. So autonomous Linux would address the OS, the operating system of your servers, and then the database itself is now moving towards an autonomous nature. And what that means is, again, predictive performance management. So things like addressing problem areas with additional indexing, with patching from a security perspective, all those things that you would do manually in the past are now going to be automated through this automated autonomous database and autonomous Linux. So when we talked about, and you're used to in your normal life of, hey, we're gonna have downtime this Thursday because such and such, we have to patch this, we have to patch that. It's preventive maintenance. That type of stuff is slowly becoming an autonomous thing that happens without any downtime. So that's pretty cool. And that's the movement of cloud infrastructure. Oracle Digital Assistant, this is not so much something that is relevant to specifically the platform. It's just another application. This is basically your chatbots. And I do have a presentation later on chatbots. So if you want to learn more about chatbots and the use of Oracle Digital Assistant, come to that session. And then load balancing. I bring this one up because, again, load balancing is a very cheap sort of thing that you turn on, and it basically will allow you to spread load across multiple servers. It just works. It's simple. It's cheap versus the traditional model where, again, you go and buy this load balancer from another company, F5 or whatever. You're buying this thing and you're putting it on-prem, and it does a lot of really cool things, and it's amazing and great. But you can do it also on OCI in a very cheap way. Now, somebody who's an expert in load balancing will probably say why an F5 is more robust and do more things. That's probably true. But for PeopleSoft instances, you can simply get away with this load balancing tool on OCI, and it does the job really, really well to basically manage the balancing the load. What that does allows you to take down one server and apply some maintenance to it, bring it back up, take the other one down, and your users never know the difference. You stay up the whole time. So pretty cool. Talked a little bit about autonomous Linux and autonomous database before, but again, just touch on it briefly again. Automated recovery means better system availability. Security is built in by default. All those things that are moving towards autonomous nature of your OS and your database. Okay, really quickly going through a couple more things here. So cost management, we talked a little bit about that before, but what we have here specifically is a screenshot of allowing you to essentially create a budget that allows you to watch your costs and to trigger alerts to yourself when you see yourself or you see your organization passing a certain amount. It can be a hard stop that shuts down services, or it can be just a notification to say, hey, just FYI, you're going to start spending more money. So we have this turned on. I have a threshold here to say, hey, warn me if the forecast looks like it's going to be above a certain number, and then send me an email. And that's exactly what you see here is that, hey, by the way, your non-prod has reached your initial threshold. It looks like the forecast is going to be beyond that. We just are notifying you, but this is something I set up for myself. We've done this for all of our customers. I set it up for Harkins. Tom, I know you get those emails and it tells you when your forecast for the month is going to go over what you expected.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a nice feature. And I mentioned, how at Harkins we've got multiple environments running, and we don't need them all up at the same time. At points where we know we need them and we're running them, probably higher utilization than normal, we do get the alerts. So I can tell you this functionality absolutely does work. And it's a good reminder at the end of the day to enforce your policies, and at the end of the day, make sure you're tracking against your budgets.
One of the things that you can do is I mentioned how when you get this tenancy, you have all these really, really fancy, robust, really complex things that you can do on the tenancy. And if you start turning this, oh, I wonder what that does, right? You turn it on and you leave it on for a day, and then you get charged for it later. And so to put some guardrails up for yourself, you could basically, as an administrator, say, yeah, actually, you know what? We don't have any need to have a GPU type of server or a dense server. We don't need big data. We don't need this. We don't need that, right? So quotas come in, and you can actually put this in through an upload, essentially, of these policies. You just write out the statement, it goes in, and it stops you from using all these different things that would normally just cost you a lot of money. So it's kind of puts up guardrails for yourself. And we do this for our customers. And here you can see that by putting on that quote, it says you cannot have any instance that's a dense, because that's just, again, not needed for a PeopleSoft workload. Okay, a couple of features I'll just go through really quick before we get to sort of our use case here, a little bit more depth. So Cloud Advisor is, again, just a feature that's on OCI that simply just tells you, hey, did you know on your tenancy, you actually have $54 that you can save. You know, here you can see that screenshot. $54 you can save if you just do a couple things. You click on it and it tells you, oh, did you know that you have some detached storage, for example, that you may have set up at one point, you forgot about it. It's just sitting there. It's not attached. So it looks weird to us, right? This is all AI. And saying, hey, do you still need that, right? You can then choose to, oh yeah, no, I don't need that. That's my mistake. You get rid of it, you save yourself money, right? So it's a predictive kind of advisor for you. Here you drill into it and it tells you exactly where your savings is going to come from. Delete unattached block volumes and boot volumes. You click on it, click through, and it'll actually just get rid of those items. And here it tells you which block or boot volume you have out there that is costing you money. CloudGuard is an automated detection response. What this is, it's a security thing, right? So what's happening here is it has a set of what's called recipes that look for specific things that it predicts are essentially a security problem. So for example, we have suspicious IP activity. How do you want to handle suspicious IP activity if AI finds this on your servers? You can choose to say, if I see that, I want to immediately take down the server and quarantine it or something like that, right? That's an automated tool that you can just put in automatically, and it monitors for you, because your administrators are not going to be monitoring 24/7, but this will. And so if you want to turn this on, it's essentially just you check the box. Yes, suspicious. Yep, I want to do suspicious IP activity, and I want to immediately create a notification. I want to quarantine that server. All of it is completely just checkbox driven through this situation with recipes on CloudGuard. It's very, very robust, and it just really handles all that for you. So with that, and we're coming down to the end stretch here, I'm going to turn it over to Tom. Tom's going to talk more specifically about Harkins.
Thanks, Cameron. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, start with, so this is essentially our service with what we're doing here with moving people from on-prem to OCI, we call it Cloud Shift. And it starts with needs analysis, planning, sizing, which is like what Tom did, he's going to talk about. And then we move towards the lift and shift, or we'll call it move and improve. It can include hosting, cloud manager configuration, and full lifecycle management. So that's basically just what we call our work on OCI. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Tom.
Thanks, Cameron. We did have one question on the load balancer. It is the load balancer OHS? If yes, does it support other modules like Shibboleth?
That's a great question for somebody who's more technical than I am. So, why don't we get our information at the end? Send us a question. And we'll let somebody who's Tom or I are not a technical administrator. Like we don't do the builds. So we oversee them and that sort of thing, but we will get an answer for you. So if you want to send us a question offline, we'll get an answer on that.
Okay, thanks, Kumaran, for the question. Okay, on to the case study. So I mentioned earlier, it's a unique project. We're actually re-implementing HCM on 9.2 from 8.9. So that is a complete re-implementation. So reconfiguring HCM applications, converting all the data from 8.9 to 9.2. In addition, we're standing up new modules. So the clients actually licensed recruiting, e-performance, and additional modules that were already on, core HR, using base benefits, payroll, but they're and also adding e-benefits and ben admin. So it really went from kind of a core HCM suite to a full suite, full applications. I think one of the main modules they're not using is absence management, but they are a heavy time and labor and user, and they're also project oriented. On the finance side, we chose to take a little bit different path because they've been on PeopleSoft for so long. They wanted to retain all of that data, and there wasn't as much effort on the finance side to go back to a vanilla application, kind of the base code. So we're actually upgrading financials from 8.9 to 9.2. They're also on a SQL Server database currently, and so part of the migration on the financial side was to actually not only do the lift and shift from on-prem to OCI, but do a database conversion, and then upgrade the tools version and the application. So we're actually in the midst of that final upgrade step to get to 9.2. All the applications are currently on 8.9, but on SQL Server for their production environments. So, a very kind of unique project from that regard, with the two pillars kind of taking a different approach. As the slide mentions here, I kind of mentioned some of the challenges with the different applications on the different pillars, but Harkins was not interested in on-prem infrastructure. They're sunsetting a lot of their applications and servers. So our project is just part of an overall effort to basically move out of their on-premise hardware.
And I'll just jump in and say, this is the latest of multiple customers who are of the same mindset, that there's no interest in on-prem infrastructure. And that's generally the trend of what we're seeing. The benefit to some of the organizations who are either refreshing everything or maybe starting and net new to Oracle is they get to make these decisions. Some companies, and probably many organizations who are on this call right now, are kind of stuck with a legacy of on-prem infrastructure. And so migrating from that is a bit of a different challenge for Harkins and for some of our other customers who have maybe moved straight onto it. But Harkins did also have a move. So it wasn't that they just started with cloud, right? I mean, they had on-prem infrastructure, right, Tom? And
correct.
So they found problems with this. It's not just they had no interest, they actually had on-prem and they had problems. So then they were saying, hey, we got to move off this, right?
Correct. Yeah. And there was, it was, I'll say, more of a strategic decision to move off of on-prem to, and some of the final points in this slide kind of address it. The no mobile technology, I mean, that just speaks to getting to a more current release for PeopleSoft. So not necessarily OCI related, but that was a big driver behind moving to 9.2. Believe it or not, they went through a full ERP selection process. So they were looking at the entire suite of, financials and HCM applications, OCI, and even comparing functionality between PeopleSoft and some of the other SaaS applications that are out there. The last point, no interest in system administration. It even goes beyond that. There's DBAs and network, folks. There's a lot of skill sets obviously required to maintain the servers and the infrastructure. So they didn't really want that overhead either anymore. So that was another big driver for them moving to cloud infrastructure. Okay, next slide, Cameron. So in terms of just the actual lift and shift project for FSCM, it took 4 months. We started with a current state review of all of their applications. They had several other applications in addition to PeopleSoft. They had a middleware application called Dimensions, which integrated with another a SaaS application, Procore. They also have imaging applications and a workflow application that was hosted on premise. So we actually migrated those applications from on-premise to OCI. So it wasn't just PeopleSoft, it was additional applications as well. So we obviously created their OCI tendency to start with, did demonstrations and training, got the network connectivity set up, went through a whole architecture design to make sure they had disaster recovery and backup strategy in place that would provide them the same service levels that they're getting currently. We could have gone an even more sophisticated route, but we kept it simple to start with, and made sure that they're getting all the daily backups and their recovery time would meet what they have in their current model. We installed and configured and tested the third-party middleware application. So I mentioned, again, we weren't just moving PeopleSoft, we were moving some other applications. So that required quite a bit of testing and configuration because of all of the integration that they had. And the go live was very uneventful. So that was a relief, and I know they were very happy to see that.
Just like we like them.
Yes. Next slide. In terms of the results, we provided employee and manager mobile self-service. There's remote secure SSO authentication. So they actually they acquired a license to AppSCN, now called PathLock. For those of you who are familiar with AppSCN or PathLock, now there was a acquisition there. They offer a plugin. So in order to do the SAML integration with Microsoft Azure AD, they had to either build or design that capability in-house or buy it, and they chose to buy it from AppSCN. They eliminated some of their performance issues with the existing infrastructure. They had some errors that they were getting that OCI was able to resolve for them. I mentioned eliminating the middleware and third-party application issues. That's where those errors and issues were coming from. We configured additional integrations between FSCM and HCM as part of the move. So that was gave them some additional capabilities and eliminated some manual integrations. We improved the performance and scalability. I talked earlier about with all these projects going on in the reimplementation, that was a huge benefit because we were constantly, building out new test environments and needing new environments to support some of the testing that we were doing, especially the recent parallel testing. So we were able to stand up a prod-like environment for financials to do our parallel testing for payroll on the HCM side. And there is continuous patching and enhancements via Cloud Manager. So we actually applied PUM images during the project as it was going on, and did selective adoption as well with a few patches that we needed. Next slide. In addition to OCI, we're also delivering managed services with it. So essentially, SpearMC is doing their system administration. With that, we've got an SLA-driven model where we're basically applying, all the quarterly tax updates on the HCM side. We're doing selective adoption as needed based on any issues that come up in production. We're doing at least one upgrade every year. It's either a tools upgrade or a PUM update. So as we know, it's important to stay current. So we're always applying at least one update a year, either a People Tools update or PUM images, sometimes both at the same time. And we have kind of a joint help desk model where initial, tier 1 help desk is provided by Harkins, and SpearMC is kind of serving as that tier 2, tier 3 support model for them. So that's about it for Harkins. Cameron, I know you have a couple other case studies, so I'll turn it back over to you.
I mean, this mimics several of our other customers. Just a couple that I'll point out. So this is a organization, Bus Global, which is in Singapore. They're just users of the application, very limited staff to support it. So we basically just host it for them on OCI. They just use it. They just use the application. It just works, and there's not a lot of drama. So it's pretty simple. This one I threw into King County. This one, they actually have been longtime users of OCI, but wanted to leverage OCI for a better disaster recovery solution. So we worked with them on that, kind of building out the capabilities there, as well as some better integration service tools. So you looking at things like integration as a service, which again, something that you can just use on OCI, some of the features on there. So they kind of looked at some of that, and we worked with them on that. So anyway, so conclusion. So I think we're at the end of our time here. We came up with 6 or 7 reasons here that are really the reasons you need to consider this sort of service approach to PeopleSoft. So one, lifecycle management is just much easier with Cloud Manager on OCI. It just is, just the automated patching, automated ability to scale up, scale down, start, stop. We didn't even talk about the automated patching, but that's, it's a great feature. Ability to kind of scale up, scale down with elasticity, leveraging AI, machine learning to do that for you on your behalf. The ability to very closely monitor your costs and to align better analytics around what your application is actually costing you. You actually can do that in OCI versus when you're on-prem, which is not really clear in exactly how much your application is actually costing you to run, the total cost of ownership. Automation, we talked about a lot today. Integration of other platform services that are just there and available to you on OCI. We didn't talk a ton about disaster recovery, but obviously ability to spin up secondary databases in a separate region, a separate availability domain where things are just replicated, and all of that sort of keeping the in sync environments and allows you to do disaster recovery. This goes way beyond just doing backups and sending backups to tape and moving them off your premises. So a much better, robust DR strategy is empowered through OCI. And then, of course, security. We talked about the suspicious IP activity. It's something that's been very much in the news, and not just in the news, but specifically for our clients needing more robust security, and OCI supports that. With that, I think that's it. Any questions? Feel free to raise your hand, put something in the chat window. We are available, of course, offline. We have a few more presentations.
Hey, Cameron, we do have a couple questions that just came in. So one question is, Harkins moving to PeopleSoft 9.2 on OCI? The answer is yes. So I think I may have covered that. That was a bit of an old question, or it came in 10 or 15 minutes ago. Would like to know how customizations and interfaces are handled. Really the same way as they are, on-prem. OCI doesn't necessarily impact that. We're actually using some you're using some of the lifecycle management tools for customizations, drop zones, event mapping. So we've actually been able to reapply. They're not a very customized client or implementation, but there are several customizations we were able to apply in the lifecycle management tools, which will make upgrades easier. Another question, how did you eliminate the integration issues? Can you share some more details? So this was interesting. They were experiencing a failed integration in it. We didn't exactly narrow in exactly why it was happening on-prem, but it had something to do with the servers, the Windows patching. So periodically when the servers were being brought down and brought back up, it caused, I'll just call it a hiccup, but it caused some hiccup in their integration between PeopleSoft and their SaaS construction application, Procore. It caused some duplicate messages. And basically that went away when we went to OCI.
And Tom, was that, remind me, is that replatforming to Linux from Windows servers to Linux? So that's a good reason why we always talk about moving to Linux off of Windows servers, because we have that problem on-prem all the time with Windows servers, with patching, automated updates, security things that Windows puts on the OS that don't happen on Linux. And so when we move people to OCI, we're taking them generally off of Windows servers, and that can be scary for people who really know Windows very well. But trust us that Linux is more, it's lighter weight, more secure, and helps PeopleSoft run much faster. Now you can run Windows servers on OCI, but Linux is just a much better model, and that's where we move people to. That's
right. The last question is PeopleTools. Is PeopleTools available on OCI like on premise? The answer is yes. So PeopleSoft applications and PeopleTools, everything is the same. It's just where are you hosting it, right?
It's even better because you can automate the patching. So you can actually want to automatically patch PeopleTools, and that will actually just automatically patch your PeopleTools on. Now you wouldn't do that probably to production, but you can do it to dev or test. So like Tom said, exactly the same, but better because you can automate some of the patching that you can't do on-prem.
That's right, but you don't lose any functionality. You just gain functionality. So one more comment. So just infrastructure on the cloud, rest remains the same. Absolutely true. So yes, your PeopleSoft applications are no different in terms of their functionality. You just get enhanced tools, as Cameron mentioned. Environment management tools, patching tools, security, it kind of runs the gamut.
Yeah, if you think about your infrastructure on-prem, you might have multiple data centers on-prem where servers over here are talking to servers over here. So think of it the same way that your servers over here now just are over there on somebody else's infrastructure, which is Oracle's infrastructure. But that's just an extension of your network. There's a connection to your network. And so all things like interfaces, all that stuff, it just works because it basically is still part of your network, if that makes sense. So integrations, all that, there's not this big sort of division between their network and your network. You basically connect it, and everything just essentially works.
There's one more direct message.
Of course, the technical architects are going to give a more complicated answer than that, but from our perspective, we just set up and it just works.
So Cameron, one more direct question. Do you have any case study with Kibana dashboards as part of OCI?
That's a good question.
It's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer that off the top of my head. We'd have to do some checking, but we could get back to you. We have done Kibana with multiple clients, but not necessarily as well. I mean, we do normally we would stand up, all the Elasticsearch indexes, as we would on-prem. So it would be, again, no different. It would just be part of your lift and shift for migrating Kibana dashboards to OCI. You'd have to have the same servers to support it. So yeah, if anything, I could see, those performing better on OCI, but it would just be part of your lift and shift project.
Now, sorry. do you, just implement Kibana, or, do you also do the data mapping? Kibana is a tool to, have all the reports and visualization, but, you have to understand the data and come up with the reports, right? So
correct. Yeah, we actually have Kibana sessions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah,
part of this conference.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we do training. So yeah, I would welcome you to join our Kibana session. We've actually done quite a bit. We have regular training monthly that we offer, live virtual training, and typically do presentations. But we've done a number of different Kibana implementations, whether it's just standing up delivered analytics or custom dashboards. We've done both. Okay, well, that's about it. I know we're over time. Thanks everyone so much for joining. Cameron, any last words?
No, just have a great week. I'm sure you guys are going to learn a lot. Hope you're still standing by the end of the week. So
yes.
I don't know if we will.
All right. Thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon and good conference. Bye-bye.
Thank you.